ॐ यो देव सवितास्माकं धियो धर्मादिगोचराः प्रेरयेत्तस्य यद्भर्गः तद्वरेण्यम् उपास्महे।
प्रणवार्थाय शुद्धज्ञानैकमूर्तये निष्प्रपञ्चाय शान्ताय श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। तच्चयोराग्निमहे गातुं यज्ञाय गातुं यज्ञपतये दैवी स्वस्तिरस्तु नः स्वस्तिर्मानुषेभ्यः ऊर्ध्वं जिगासु भेषजं शन्नो अस्तु द्विपदे शं चतुष्पदे। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ शन्नो मित्रः शं वरुणः शन्नो भवद्वर्यमा शन्न इन्द्रो बृहस्पतिः शन्नो विष्णुरुक्रमः। नमो ब्रह्मणे नमस्ते वायु त्वमेव प्रत्यक्षं ब्रह्मासि त्वामेव प्रत्यक्षं ब्रह्म वदिष्यामि कृतं वदिष्यामि सत्यं वदिष्यामि तन्मामवतु तद्वक्तारमवतु अवतु माम् अवतु वक्तारम्। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। Start Vega Chugamani again. We are somewhere around 305, 710, around there, in that range. Because there is a lot of repetition, we have to go to the topic with which we finished before the next time. The topic we were discussing is about elimination of the identification with the ego principle as oneself. If you see the translation, it is talking about eliminating the ego. Eliminating the ego here means eliminating the different life processes that are based on the ego, not encouraging a life that is centered on the ego. And eliminating the habitual self-definition based on the ego. Ego is nothing but the consciousness reflected in the mind when it is associated with the five sense faculties and the body, gives an appearance of the self as though it is limited by the body. So it gives the appearance of I and mine on the body. Ahankara means the I maker. How it makes the I? It superimposes the consciousness on a structure, and then the I, the consciousness which is Swayambhati, which is self-effulgent nature, the consciousness which is of nature of its own awareness, the self-effulgent consciousness, it is shining in the structure. So when the self-effulgent consciousness shines in a structure, then there is a possibility of the consciousness owning up the different qualities of the structure in which the consciousness shines. You understand? When consciousness shines in a structure, it has an ability to own up, possibility to own up the different qualities of the structure upon itself if the consciousness, if the true nature of the consciousness is not known. See, there are two things happening. First, in any experience, we first become aware of a situation. After we become aware, the bare awareness, without any processing, without any understanding, nothing, just bare awareness. This is of the nature of consciousness. Now, based on this awareness, there is a judgment, there is a knowledge taking place. This is a stool, this is a pot, this is a cloth, this is a person. So, bare awareness means no interpretation. Just sensory data, but the sensory data is not interpreted. Even if the sensory data is organized in a certain way, it is given a meaning. How the given sensory data is given a meaning? It is given a meaning based on memory, based on preconceived notions, either as a vasana that is already there in the body, in the causal body, or through the different ideas that are embedded in the Vijnanaya in the past life plus this life. So, consciousness associated with the buddhi, which is driven by the vasanas, this creates the ego. This is the process. So, this is natural. As long as we are alive, this ego is going to be there. So, the teaching has to be taken as do not identify with the ego. Let the ego not be your definition. Whatever the ego feels, it is not your nature. You begin like this. When we begin like this, over a period of time, when the vasanas become very tanukarana structure, when the vasanas become very weak, then the force with which the ego asserts will not be there. The ego is only, will be like a mere appearance, it will be like a joker, without any value. You can use it or not use it. If a situation is required, you can invoke the ego required for the situation for the purpose of using. Ego is only functional. Who are you? I am so and so. No, you don't say I am the consciousness reflected in the mind which is identified with the body. You don't say like that. Who are you? You say some name. It's useful. While saying am I that? When a person is continuously told you are this, you are that, the person tends to assume that identity for oneself. There is a sense of it's like my usual example is when you watch a football match, your sense of I gets superimposed into that team. You can feel the I moving according to how that forward in the team is moving. If he hits the goal, the I is happy. If he loses the goal, if the team is unhappy, the I is unhappy. The team is happy, the I is happy. How? The I got superimposed into that football team. In the same way, it is happening in the body, in the mind. There is no big difference at all. Even in the dream, you think you are going somewhere, you are doing something. How? There is a certain mental structure, an identity, or a personality that is created in a dream. And the consciousness is reflected in the buddhi that is working inside that personality, which is creating identity. So, this is the ego process. So, elimination of ahankara means elimination of self-definition based on the ahankara. That is how it always and anywhere it comes, always translated like this. Because almost no book writes properly this non-identification, because in the Sanskrit, the explanation is the words used are very nice. But the problem is when it comes to translation in English, it is it becomes very funny. For example, the key point is this: ahankare kartaryahamiti matim muncha sahasa. Give up the sense of identification with the ego. That is the whole point. Within the sense of doership, etc. Being established with the self. Identifying with this false sense, you have reached an embodied consciousness. So this is the whole point. The whole talk of eliminating ego is eliminating the habit in the buddhi that generates an identity based on the ego. Identification with the ego. How do you eliminate that? Through self-knowledge, by contemplating on the true nature of ego. First, you see the difference between the self and the not self, the body and the consciousness, body, mind and consciousness. And you understand you are the consciousness. And what is the nature of this consciousness? Satyam Jnanam Anantam. If the consciousness is of the nature of existence, self-revealing awareness, the quality of it is the consciousness itself, and it is of the nature of completeness without any parts, Advaitam, Ekameva, Dvitiyam, one without a second, all which we listen in the scripture. So through the teaching, there cannot be a second entity. When there cannot be a second entity to this self, That means if there is nothing around here, there is not me. So you resolve this entire universe through Ishvara, the concept of Ishvara, you resolve the Ishvara into the whole Ishvara into the self, and everything becomes one. So I am the Brahman. So the Tattvamasi, all this whole process of Prakriya, everything is, we have seen that already before. Okay. Now, so he is giving certain, in the next verses, he is giving certain warning about, even though you may have understood. So this is for a person who has understood the truth about oneself, trying to be established in the truth of oneself. So when a person is trying to be established in the truth of oneself, the whole point is about eliminating habitual error. Habitual error comes only by, it's fed, the habitual error is fed only by likes and dislikes. Through attachment to specific experiences. That is what makes the ego sense reinforced. See, suppose if you are, it's something like this, you are forming an identity. Let us say you join a college. In the college, you just join, okay? So your school identity has not gone. In the first year when you are a fresher, I am from this school, I am from this school, where are you from? So you become a person from that school, that high school. And then, second year goes, I am from this college. Third year goes, I am from this college. Then, this I am from, suppose if the college is a very prestigious college, your self-definition comes, you are from Ivy League, London School of Economics. Then your self-definition comes from that institute. So, I'm a student of Harvard. I'm a student of Princeton. This kind of self-definition they give, how it is because of reinforcement. If you don't do reinforcement, you don't, that kind of vritti, that the tendency for that ego sense weakens up. So when the ego sense is very strong and it is asserting itself, especially through a sensory experience, it is very, very difficult to discriminate yourself out of it. To discriminate your true nature out of it and to see to recognize your true nature amidst the noise of this ego. It is like trying to hear a beautiful music in a noisy room. When the noise comes down, you can decipher the music. There is some music going on. When all the noise stops, there are no obstacles for your listening to the music. In the same way, all these verses are telling nothing but when the vasanas and the ego sense is completely eliminated, the self-knowledge shines in its entire completeness, in its entirety, without any obstruction. There is absolutely no obstruction to the expression of the self-knowledge. There is no obstruction to the experience of the true nature of oneself. That means there is no obstruction to the shining of this knowledge of oneself. We should not say experience, it's not a very good word. The shining of this knowledge about the true knowledge of oneself is absolutely without any obstruction. So it has a certain presence in the mind. It shines. That is the idea. In Yoga Sutra, second chapter, he talks about Viveka Khyati, the flame of knowledge. By the practice of the different limbs of yoga, the impurities are removed and the flame of knowledge shines. It is like a mirror is covered with dust. That analogy also came some few verses before. Like a mirror is covered with dust, the mind is covered with the vasanas and everything. Like when you remove the dust from a mirror, how the image is shown clearly. In the mind that is purified entirely, one is able to recognize one's own true nature. So the purpose of all our practices is nothing but to purify the mind, Chitta Shuddhi. Karma cannot give you moksha. It can give only Chitta Shuddhi. We saw in the beginning of Viveka Chudam. So this is the whole thing about it. So here he is asserting certain points like Samula api mahanaham punaha vyullekhidah Syadyadi chetasa kshanam sanjivya vikshepa satam karoti na bhasvata pravrashi varido yatha. Even when the ahankara, this habitual sense of individuality that comes based on the body and the mind, even though it is completely rooted out. Here, completely rooted out means samulakritto api, means even after removing at its root, means removing the avidya. Even after the avidya is gone, that's how you have to understand. If the ego sense is completely rooted out, here he is not talking about the habitual error. He is talking about the fundamental reality attached to the ego. An ignorant person, in his mind, ego is operating. For the ignorant person, there is only the ego. There is no self apart from the ego. You just pick up a guy on the road and you ask him or her, you say, who are you? But do you know that you are, let's say on a birthday, just pick up somebody and do you know that you are not born? Just go and ask them, give me a break, who are you? Are you okay? So because they have no idea about anything that is not something about themselves as something other than body and mind. So this is the ignorant person. But a jnani, the root cause of the ego, which is the lack of the self-knowledge of one's own true nature, that is removed. That means even though after removing the ego sense at its root, which means after removing the vidya through knowledge, Mahanaham, this tremendous powerful sense of I comes again and again. How? It gets revived in the mind. Even for a moment, if it returns to life, it creates hundreds of mischiefs and distractions. By the wind, just like how the clouds are brought by the wind in the rainy season. Even if it is revived for a second, it creates a lot of distractions. That is what he says. That means returns to life and creates hundreds of distractions. So how it comes to life, this is how it is. Nigrihya Shatrorahamo Avakasha Kvachinna Deyo Vishayanuchintya Sa eva Sanjivana Hedurasya Prakshina Jambhira Yatorivambhu. Having once renounced this enemy, the ego, Nigrihya, having overpowered means having Nigrihya means even after letting go of it, even after detaching from it, even after controlling it, bringing under your control, this enemy, Shatroho, Aham, to the ego sense, Avakashaha, Vachita, in the least. If you give a small space for this ego sense to survive, it's a problem. So that even the smallest space for this ego sense to survive should not be given. Vishaya anuchintya, ruminating over sense objects. This is the whole point. Not a single moment's rest should be given to let it ruminate over the sense objects. That means don't allow the ego to enjoy, do not encourage doership and enjoyership. That is the idea. How the ego sense survives? Through doership and enjoyership. How this doership and enjoyership arises? Because of the power of vasana. When we are sitting quietly, from the background a suggestion comes. Have prajitura. Negresa. We will have negresa after the class. Okay? So have a negresa, suggestion comes. The taste of the negresa, what you had yesterday, it comes from the mind. Now, how it is very, so there is the idea of it is pleasing, very pleasing. Let us say, suddenly you remember that your telephone is on. Oh, I have just started, before starting the meditation, I should switch off the telephone. Now this is dvesha, dislike. The suggestion comes, oh my God. So the moment the idea of the telephone comes, at the time of meditation, or somebody is going to call. Two people are there. One person is in love. Another person is in a lot of debt. That is the boyfriend. Okay. So, the phone comes for the person who is in debt. The moment the phone rings, the person who is in debt gets alarmed. Who is calling me to ask the money back? The person who is in love, even the debtor is, even the bank or the debtor is calling this person, he will think, it is my love who is calling, instantly. Unless, I'm talking about those times when you don't have different ringtones, only one ringtone for every person. So now you know, one ringtone means this person. So then you think that is the person. So now, the same telephone, the same sensory input, the same ding 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 ringtone, but the vritti is raga for the lover, dvesha for the one in debt. The person in debt has a dislike for the same sound. The person in love is in desire for the same sound. Wants the phone to ring again and again in all the wrong moments also. So now, where is the value for this sensory input? Because of the personal relationship with that particular sense object of sense. So if you allow the ego to ruminate on a sense object, that is the idea. If you give a space for the ego sense in relationship with the sensory experience, it gets reinforced. Because the only reinforcing is based on the experiences and strength of the vasanas. Every time I relate with an object, with an idea that I am the doer and I am the enjoyer, not only that tendency to enjoy, the habit of enjoying the object, not only that desire gets reinforced, my ego sense gets reinforced. The habitual tendency to define myself based on the body and the mind, that tendency in the buddhi gets reinforced. The value of the object gets reinforced in the manas. The manas is more attached to the object. That is the emotional part. The buddhi creates identity. That means the more I am attached to specific objects, which means things, people, gods, spiritual experiences, everything, any object, anything that can be objectified. If I am attached to that, my self-definition gets reinforced with respect to that. So in the middle, it will not take much time for me to forget all about the true nature of myself and get lost. So from there, it can go endlessly into all kinds of tracks. That is why he says, do not give even a single moment's rest to the ego. Don't give even the slightest space. Don't accommodate this ego sense with respect to any sense object. Don't allow it to dominate over any sense object. That is just what brings it back to life. Just like water revives a dried up citron tree. So a tree, like a lemon tree, whatever, a dried up tree, it's like, for example, when you look in the winter, you go to the park, all the trees are dead. Are they dead? Let one rain come and the spring come and the sunlight come. When spring comes, all the tree comes back to life. So a mind in samadhi, Samsara movie. You saw the Samsara movie, Tibetan movie. 3 years, 3 days, 3 months and 3 days he is in meditation. Then dead mind is like a dead tree in winter. He comes back to the village. Within 2 or 3 months, he is in love with a girl and he gets married and then he goes into a complete full samsara. They show how the vrittis and how the vasanas come. So control. Somebody who is in a cave for 3 years, 3 months and 3 days in complete absorption, that person can get back into, no matter you are there in the cave for 150 years, still it's the same story. Swami Ramakrishna, he tells a beautiful story. It seems there was a Hatha Yogi who is good in Kechari Mudra. There is a mudra called Kechari Mudra. You cut your freedom of the tongue and put the tongue inside the throat and absorb your prana inside and go into a kind of absorption called Jada Samadhi, Yogic Samadhi, Kevala Kumbhaka. Completely switch off from the world. Your body can survive for centuries together if you remain like that with the proper implement, the proper techniques and herbs and everything. So there was a yogi who said, asked the student, hey, bring me water. Before the student could come, he was tempted to do this technique because it gives a lot of ecstasy. So he put his tongue inside and went into Samadhi. By the time the student brought back water, he was in Samadhi. The student waited 1 year, 5 years, 10 years. Nothing happened. And then he left. That fellow became old. He said, our Guru wanted water. And then he is in Samadhi. So his son, his grandson, after a lot of 2-3 generations are over, suddenly this yogi woke up. First thing, hey, where is the water? So this is the story of the mind under control. The mind under control is only waiting for the right conditions because it is just a brain circuit that is not activated. You have switched off a light. As long as the connection is there, as long as it is like a seed, as long as the seed is alive, I can create a plant anytime if I provide the right conditions. Even a dead little mosquito inside the amber, inside some tree, amber tree, in that resin, one little mosquito, they take and make a whole Jurassic Park out of that. Mosquito which has eaten the blood of the dinosaur. From that mosquito, they have recreated the dinosaur. We read about this. So that is the same process in the mind also. So ego is a certain pattern. It is in the buddhi. That is why we say in the Bhagavad Gita it comes. The sense faculties are higher than the body. The mind is higher than the sense faculties. The buddhi is higher than the mind. That which is higher than the buddhi is you. By the knowledge of what you are, which is as you, the real one who is higher than the buddhi, may you conquer the rest of them. That is the idea. So that which brings it back to life, just like water which revives up the dried up tree. What brings it back to life? Allowing the mind to ruminate on a sense object based on the ego sense. Allowing the buddhi to think about a sense object in terms of acquiring, in terms of enjoyership or doership. A personal connection with an object, that is what brings the ego back. That is what he says. Dehatmana samsthita eva kami vilakshanaha kamayita katham syad athortha sandhana paratvameva bheda prasaktya bhavabandha hetuhu dehatmana sthita eva kami. The one who lives in the body with the identification, the one who lives in a way deha atmana, the one who lives with the idea that I am the body, the one who lives with the idea of oneself defined based on the body, that is the person. That person alone is the one who is always caught up in desire. Kami means the one who is desiring things. Vilakshanaha kamayita katham, the one who is free from this sense of self-definition based on the body. How that person can desire something? So, desire is not the problem. The ego sense based on the body is that which keeps the desire alive. Otherwise, desire is not a problem. Desire is there, hundreds of desires is there. If I get enlightened, all of you are having desires. Does your desire disturb me? Your desire doesn't disturb me. If you are in meditation, there are 1 billion people in the planet who are thinking about 1 trillion things. All that does not disturb me. 1, 2, 3 thoughts inside this head disturbs me. Why? Because I think I am the one affected by the thought. I think I am the one related. So the self-definition based on the body alone is the one who desires. Desires, heads, all put together. Okay? So without this identification, how there can be desire? It cannot be. And hence, the tendency to ruminate over sense objects is verily the cause of bondage of worldly existence and the sense of duality. Bhavabandha hetu, the cause of the bondage with the cycle of becoming. Bhava means with all those things that take birth and death. Vedha prasakya. With the firm idea of duality. So this ruminating on a sense object. How can you think about a sense object? That means you are focused on the mithya and not on the satya. If I think about the name and form, in Drisya Viveka, a beautiful contemplation method is given by Shankaracharya. He says, in an object, you say this is a pot. When you say this is a pot, the potness is mithya. The isness in the pot is satya. So whatever the object you are thinking about, remove the name and form and focus on the existence aspect alone. That is one kind of absorption, contemplation. Whatever the mind thinks of, you are in meditation, the mind is thinking of all kinds of things. Mind is thinking about an object. Why the mind thinks about an object? Because there is an inherent, programmed interest in that object. So you watch the interest. The interest is what value that object brings for you. Those things that have value for your ego, brain stores information. There are a lot of things that you notice, but the brain does not remember everything. And over a period of time, it forgets. It keeps all the data, processes, and then keeps some data which is useful and deletes the other data which is not useful. So all the brain circuits are optimized. How it is done? Based on what is relevant for me. So what is relevant for me decides what stays in the mind. That is called vasana. So what happens? When you think about an object, instead of fighting with the process of thinking about the object, why don't you think about the reality of the object? See that the problem comes in the duality. This is an object, this is me, I am the enjoyer of this object, which means it is based on my body-mind structure, which is defining me, and the shape and the name and the form of that object, which is defining the object, and the connection between this body-mind complex with that object, the mithya here in connecting with the mithya there, that is what decides the relationship with the object. So now, in the object side, that object is only a name and form. If I remove the name and form, what is there? Satchidananda, the pure existence. If I remove the name and form and body and mind here, what is there? Satchidananda. That is me. That is that is in village English. Okay. So it's a famous thing in India. This is that is. Some movie somebody said so. So the meditation, what he says is, in any object, when you say this is a pot, the potness is mithya, the isness is Satchidananda, it is the Satvastu. So he is asking you to tune to that. So the other side of that is what he says is the tendency to ruminate over sense objects is very the cause of bondage, and that is what reinforces the habit of duality. So see, a person who has understood one's own nature and the reality, the Brahman, he knows duality is only an appearance, it is not true and all that. But this tendency to reinforce the habit of what encourages this dualistic thinking is the raga dvesha. It is the desire to enjoy desire to feed a sense craving. That is idea. When you feed a sense craving that is based on pre-programmed habit patterns, and when you encourage that, that reinforces the dualistic thinking. So here the importance is given for the sannyasi lifestyle. When the effects are flourishing, the seeds are also observed to increase. Karya pravardhanat dvija pravriddhihi. Karya pravardhanat bija pravriddhihi paridrishyate. Karya nasha bija nasha tasmat karyam nirodhaye. Because of the growth of the effects, the growth of the seeds takes place, and it is observed. When the destruction of the effects, there is destruction of the seeds, the causes. So, karyam nirodhaye. Nirodhaye means one must control the effects. What is the cause? Ego sense is the cause. What is the effect? The sense objects of the effect. It is like mutually reinforcing. The ego sense is the cause for my relationship with the sense object. My relationship with the sense object is the effect of the ego pattern, but when I relate with the sense object and when I encourage the effect, it feeds the cause. And the cause becomes more powerful. Just like how there is a seed, I plant and grow the seed, and the tree is growing. It's something like controlling the growth of one species of plant. So if one kind of a weed in agriculture, there is something called as weed plants. The weeds cannot completely be eliminated, but there is a point where before you decide to eliminate, you have to contain the growth of the weed. If you don't contain the growth of the weed, it becomes impossible to eliminate. So the more the weed grows, you allow the weed to grow, the more it is going to spread seeds. And the more the weed, it is like mutually reinforcing. In the same way, he says, the habit of relating with sense objects, that has to be controlled. Nirodhe, let it be stopped. Stop that indulgence and you have space to work with the root. So the root gets eliminated over a period of time. Is that? Vasana vriddhitaha karyam karya vriddhaya cha vasana. Vardhate sarvatha pumsaha samsaro na nivartate. Through the increase of the desires, vasanas, the tendencies to enjoy, karya vriddhitaha karyam, the sense of doership increases. When the sense of the doership and the action done with the doership is increasing, the desires are also increasing. For such a person, transmigration never comes to an end. Samsaro na vidyate. Samsara means taking birth, punaravijanam, punaravimaranam, born again, dead again, dead again. This cycle never stops. The person, that means what? You may just listening and just knowing that I am Brahman is not enough. Knowing I am Brahman, one must take care to be committed to this knowledge that I am Brahman. My teacher always used to say, who doesn't know that he is Brahman? Because of the paperback, because of the Google, because of whatnot, and because of gurus, free flying gurus, high flying gurus going everywhere. Everybody knows I am the ultimate, I am the absolute. But how that knowledge comes into action, in the sense how a person is established, committed to that knowledge. It is like smoking is injurious to health. I should stop smoking. Okay, I know smoking is injurious to health, but I will smoke. Means what? I don't give space for the vasana to work with the vasana with the knowledge. So the mind that is busy within the zone of duality, that mind must be contained, that force must be contained, and that mind, the intellect which is lost there, has to be revived back and put in touch with the truth. This is called Jnana Nishtha. Jnana Nishtha means being established in the knowledge. Being established in the knowledge means completely eliminating all the habitual errors along with the causes and conditions that encourage the habitual error. So this getting rid of the conditions can be understood in two ways. If you are a sannyasi, you strictly follow the yati dharma, the dharma prescribed for a sannyasi, for a monk, for a kalugar. A kalugar is not supposed to do this, do that. A lot of rules are there. According to the tradition, some rules are there. And those rules make sure that you are not in the company of sense object. You don't indulge in. For example, sannyasi is not supposed to have entertainment. Not supposed to. So a sannyasi can simply say, sannyasi has no obligation towards anybody or anything, or any social structure or divine structure. Absolutely no obligation. His only job is to stay in the knowledge of the self, nothing else. But for a karma yogi, a person who is in active way of life, this is not possible. So what that person must do, that person must renounce internally and learn to withdraw from what is not absolutely necessary. What is not one's duty, one should not bother to get into it. This is the advice given further. If something is not my duty, and it is not for the welfare of the world or somebody else, to relieve somebody's trouble or for the welfare of the world, I am not supposed to poke my nose and bother about it. This is the advice for a karma yogi. I am not here to, so not to encourage that identity. Every time that the action happens, because I am in the situation, let my self-definition not come from that active situation. Let me always be conscious of myself, which means the practice of yoga, practice of samadhi, Raja Yoga, etc., regular listening and study and contemplation, once in a while taking a break for oneself, and constant nidhyasanam, always remembering nitya anusandhanam, always remembering the true nature of one, myself, amidst the activities. How to do that? Again, wonderful example that is given is when a mother is working in the kitchen, her child is playing in the hall. She may be working cane, she may be cutting vegetables, she may be doing a lot of things. But her mind is always on the child which is playing in the hall. One little sound, she will drop everything and run. So she's working continuously, but the mind is there. Like that, you are doing everything with all the utmost skill set and with the utmost attention. But the buddhi is not devoted to the ego, the buddhi is devoted to the truth of oneself. That is the advice or the given for the karma yoga. So based on each one's way of life, we should take it. You cannot take all the rules meant for sannyasi. Sannyasi is not supposed to, mix freely in the public and all that. He's not supposed to have any possessions. He's supposed to eat his food only again. Not supposed to even cook one's own food. Like that, you have a lot of rules. So that is not applicable for the way of life that is here. So how we have to take it is, let me reduce my indulgence. Let indulgence not be a reason for me to do something. Let reinforcing my identity and personality, let it not be the reason for me to do something. Let dharma be the reason for doing something. And let doing something be the context for me for self-observation. To see if how the mind is asserting itself. When something is done very well and people appreciate, that ego sense comes up. You feel very good about yourself. So then you can observe that, how it comes. Behind that is the self-definition that comes from the identification with the body and mind. So you must be able to catch that habitual ego sense and not to revel in that. No? The moment you notice an ego sense coming up, doership, or a sense of enjoyership coming up, immediately you subject that to the fire of discrimination. You start roasting it in discrimination. Analysis, self-observation and vichara. That is what is recommended. So if you encourage it for 1 second and indulge in that, it becomes stronger. Next time it becomes even more difficult to discriminate it out. That is that. That's what he is telling continuously in all the verses. The next one. Samsara bandha vichityai tad dvayam pradahedhyati vasana vridhiretabhyam chintaya kriyaya bahihi. In order to snap the chain of transmigration, one should burn to ashes these two desires and actions. For dwelling on sense objects and doing selfish action leads to the increase of vasanas or desires. Abhyam pravardhamana sute samskritimatmanah trayanam cha kshayopayah sarvavasthasu sarvada. Nourished by these two. By these two means the desire and the desire for the objects and the sense of doership. The doership and enjoyership. Okay, kartrutvam, bhoktutvam, that's what it means. Through the doership and enjoyership, what is nourished? The vasanas are nourished, and this nourished vasana produces samsara. Samsara here has to be understood as birth and death. Okay? Birth and death also everyday life. People nowadays, they very conveniently try to redefine samsara as some abstract becoming. You are constantly becoming this and becoming that. Yes, that is the whole point, that is the root of it. But that is coming from a tendency to do away with the concept of reincarnation. Because it is not very rational. Reincarnation means you have to believe in something. What is the problem? Because I don't have Shraddha in Veda, I don't have Shraddha in the Shastra. Shastra talks about reincarnation. Traditionally, samsara is always understood as punarapimanam, punarapijanam, punarapijanani, jatare sayanam. Punarapimanam, again and again birth, again and again death. Again you are born and then again you are in a dead body. Jatare sayanam, you are into the state of becoming a dead body. So this is samsare. This is samsara, bahudukkare. This is samsara, this is very sorrowful. Shankaracharya says in Bhaja Govindam. So, this is samsara. What is samsara? Being born and dead again and again. So, we should not try to simply rationalize it as being born into a dimension of consciousness and all this. It's all nonsense. Birth and death. If you have a problem accepting this, please have a look at your Shraddha. This is the advice given. So, the traditional understanding of samsara is birth and death. And when we say samsara, let us understand as birth and death. After that, let us extend the concept to what is behind this birth and death, which is basically being born, becoming somebody, becoming something, which is happening every moment. That comes later after accepting the concept of birth and death. Okay. So, the samsara, the process of transmigration, birth and death is sustained by these vasanas which are reinforced through the doership and enjoyership. This is where Karma Yoga comes. In Karma Yoga, when you are practicing for the Chitta Shuddhi, as constantly offering the result, attachment to the result of action to Ishvara, Ishvararpita Buddhi, when you do in Karma Yoga, what happens is the grip, the subconscious or the emotional interest in the different sense objects come down. When the emotional interest, the natural interest in sense object, when it comes down, then the discrimination awakens. The mind is available to analyze what is what. If it is rushing to grab something, it is not available to analyze what is what. It is only available for using whatever to get what it wants. Then it is an intellect, high IQ, zero SQ. That's what happens. And if you become much more intelligent, EQ also evaporates. There is only IQ. Very smart, surviving, go-getter. That person is very good to become somebody's donkey. So then what happens? Devanam, Pashuhu. So if this go-getter becomes a religious person, he is considered like pet animal for the gods. Called Devanam Pashuhu. A person who is very busy doing Vedic rituals and for a Vedic ritual. Forget all the other guys who are doing voodoo and all that. Forget it. We are talking about Vedic Brahmana, a Brahmin who is devoted to ritualistic Vedic life, whose mind is always on the different results promised by the Veda, heaven, etc. Traigunya Kshaya Veda, Vishtraigunya Bhavarjuna. All the results promised in the Veda are belonging to the three guna, the three Prakrit, Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. So renounce all those results, get rid of all of them, see the limitation in all of them, become the one who is devoted to the truth which is not affected by the three gunas. May you be devoted to self-knowledge. Nishtraigunya Bhava means not becoming, it is understand the true nature of yourself. That means may you be devoted to the knowledge of yourself as something that is not affected by the three gunas. Bhagavad Gita. So, the person who is very busy go-getter, whose mind is only on acquiring results, they tease that person. You know, this is called Grihastha Buddhi. They tease. When you go to talk with the monks and brahmacharis, sadhus, in the sadhu circle, they will say, when they meet a householder who is very ritualistic for the sake of getting results, say, this fellow, because of doing all these rituals, because all the rituals are done in fire. In fire you have smoke. Some smoke has entered his intellect. It is smoke buddhi. This person has smoke buddhi, he will not understand Vedanta. This person has to go through. That is why you have a phase. After being a householder, you are supposed to go through a phase called Vanaprastha, forced dweller. You remain in the forest where you cook for yourself and you devote to austerities. So it can be something like a retirement from active worldly life before becoming a monk. That was the recommendation. And in this time, the person practices Raja Yoga and all those things, and he is not, studies the scriptures and things like this. So this is when a person, this kind of a person, when he is very busy pursuing different spiritual results, forget worldly results. Even those spiritual results which are approved by Veda, dharmic spiritual results, that person is called as a pet animal for the gods. Devanam Pashuhu. How animals, we treat animals, how animals are for us, they are for the gods. So, they are like, very good, I got a donkey. They are very happy. This fellow keeps doing all the rituals and it makes me more powerful. So they give him a lot of gifts, and the person shares the gifts and does yajna, and the deva become happy. And they don't want one donkey to leave the flock. That is why they say when a person wants to become a monk and pursue the self-knowledge, Lord Indra, the king of all the gods, the deities, he will put a lot of obstacles. In Buddhism also they talk about this, Indra Mara, it's called. So he puts a lot of obstacles. He will send the damsels, we see in all the Indian spiritual terminology. One rishi is meditating and then all these heavenly girls come and dance, and then a lot of gold is offered, a lot of richness is offered. These stories are there everywhere. Like for example, when a person wants self-knowledge, he is not into karma anymore. So he becomes free from karma. So the gods use the donkey. They will put a lot of obstacles there. So here, the point I went to this, doing actions with the sense of doership and enjoyership leads to the increase of vasanas, which in turn produces and sustains transmigration. Transmigration also means transmigration from earth to heaven, from one heaven to another heaven, from heaven to earth to hell. All these are included in transmigration. Every dimension, being born and reborn across all dimensions and across all parallel universes is considered as transmigration, not only earth. So anybody says that if you do this you will go to heaven, you don't need to bother, because there is another form of transmigration. Any going and coming is samsara. That is the idea. Okay. Sarvatra sarvataha. Sarvatra sarvataha. No, the other part of the previous one. Sarva avasthasu sarvada. So, how this transmigration and the vasanas are destroyed by under all circumstances. Sarva avasthasu means no matter what state you are in, no matter what mode the body and the mind is in, may you always apply this sarvada all the time. And the means of destruction of these three. What are these three? And the vasana, the doership, enjoyership, and vasana. The three things are the sense of doership, the sense of enjoyership, and the vasana that is connected with specific objects. These three are the samsara mula hetu. These are the ones that cause samsara, sustain samsara. How to destroy that? By being aware of this fact. At all times, at all states, at all places, in all situations, and being devoted to the self-knowledge. Say Vedanta Trishu Kaleshu. Vedanta is to be applied all the three periods of time. And never in front of one guru, one's own guru, it says. Okay. Basically at all periods of time. Okay. May you resort to the Vedantic inquiry in all periods of time, in all places, at all times. That is the Sarvatra, Sarvataha, Sarva Brahmamatra Avalokanaihi, Brahmamatra Avalokanaihi, Sadbhava Vasana Dar, Sadbhava Vasana Dar, Dharyat, Dharyat Tatutrayam Layamashmute. Sarva Sadbhava Vasanat Dhardhyat Tatrayam Layamashmute. Sarvatra, everywhere, Sarvataha, in all respects, everything is Brahman, looking upon everything as Brahman, and through the Sad, here the translation is through the strong thinking of the longing to be one with reality. See, the Sanskrit word is Sadbhava Vasana Dharya. Sadbhava Vasana Adharadhyat. Here means Sadbhava Vasana. Here means the tendency to be devoted to the truth. By strengthening the tendency to be devoted to the truth, how? By looking upon everything as Brahman. At all times, at all periods, may you look upon everything as Brahman alone. Whenever the mind goes towards an object, wherever the mind goes, it goes because of some habit, it goes. When it goes and falls on an object, may you contemplate immediately, instead of allowing the buddhi to relate to it as object, let the buddhi be devoted to the contemplation on the truth behind the appearance of the name and form, which is Brahman. Whatever you are looking at is Brahman. No? Whatever Sarvam Khalvidam Brahmam, we have a word in the Veda. So you have all these Mahavakyas which is useful for contemplation. Sarvam Hetat Brahma, there is a word in Atharva Veda, Mandukya Upanishad. Sarvam Hetat Brahma, Ayam Atma Brahma. Then you have Om Ityeta Aksharamidam Sarvam, the word Om, the sound Om, and what it represents, that imperishable reality is what all that is here. All that is here is nothing but the reality represented by the sound Om. Is one. The Om Ityeta Aksharamidam Bhutam Bhavat Bhavishyan Sarvamiti Omkara Eva. When you remember that, when you contemplate on that in meditation, as a result of the contemplation, a certain attraction to the truth is produced in the mind. It is something like Paris is beautiful. Everybody says Paris is beautiful, Paris is beautiful, Paris is beautiful. And then you are going on a flight to let us say Barcelona. From Romania, Bucharest to Barcelona flight is going. Because of some snag, technical whatever, the flight is diverted to Paris for 2 days and you are given a hotel accommodation. When you hear that, immediately the whole association, Paris is beautiful, that whatever you did contemplation before, by feeding it, you did Shravana, you listened, Paris is beautiful, all the fashion, you saw the YouTube, you saw the TV. So then, when the flight is going to Paris, the whole sense of relating to that Paris as beautiful comes. Similarly, Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman, everything is Sarvam Hetat Brahma, I am Atma Brahma, all that is here is Brahman, I am that Brahman. Then this becomes very clear in the mind. Wherever the mind goes, only this truth awakens, not the apparent importance of the reality, the habitual importance that your mind had given before knowledge to an object. The habitual importance that is associated with an object through the ego sense, that is also there. The Brahma Vasana is also there. Sadbhava. Sadbhava means here, Sarva Brahma Tavalokanaihi Sadbhava Vasana. So everything in this world is Brahman. This Vasana created by the knowledge that everything is Brahman, that is also coming. So the teacher is telling, see, these two will be there. Choose this Vasana. This Vasana, the tendency to see everything as Brahman. Choose this tendency and reinforce the tendency by contemplating on that object as Brahman. When you keep doing that, you will be encouraging and you will be strengthening this Vasana, the tendency to see everything as Brahman. So when this Vasana becomes very strong, then the worldly Vasana, the Vasana, the tendency to create duality comes down. There will be a critical point where the duality tendency will not come at all. Based on this concept, we have a theory of levels of accomplishment in enlightenment. That is, Jnana Nishtha, how much a person is established in the self-knowledge. How much the buddhi is established in the self-knowledge. It comes in the Yoga Vasishta, one very ancient text. It talks about Sapta Bhumika, the 7 levels of accomplishment in self-knowledge. Sudecha, Vicharana, Tanumanasi, Sattva-Vatti, Asamshakti, Padartha, Bhavani, Turiya, 7 levels are there. So you can, Sapta Bhumika is called. The 7 levels of accomplishment in enlightenment. 7 levels of enlightenment you put, that's how they always write it. It's not 7 levels of enlightenment. It is 7 levels of the commitment of the buddhi to enlightenment. So that is discussed here, and the categories are discussed. What are the defining marks? Brahmavid, Brahmavid Vara, Brahmavid Variya, Brahmavid Varishta. Like that you have different categories. So that the same concept is coming here. So there are 2 schools. One school says, once you know I am Brahman, that's it. No more obligations, nothing to do. It's finished. Another school says, even though you know I am Brahman, you have to be devoted to that knowledge and not encourage the vasanas, and then there is a level of perfection in that knowledge which can be categorized. But what this other school says is, see, it may be there, doesn't matter, but the jnani, the conclusion is samanvaya, the putting both together, the final conclusion is, do not define yourself based on how much self-knowledge you have accomplished. how much is my commitment? So don't keep this 7 levels accomplishment table next to you and keep looking at it. Today I am here. So this is every day, every 2 weeks fill up a questionnaire. Where do you think you are in the scale of 1 to 7 in enlightenment questionnaire? Is everything Brahman? Yes. And you get 1 point. Is your mom Brahman? Yes. Is your wife Brahman? 5, 6, 7, 8, you get 1 10. So you fill up a form like this, and then after that you will say, okay, today I am Brahmavid. After 1 year I am Brahmavid Vara. It's not like that. So don't get into this. That to avoid this habit of self-definition, that is again ego. So to avoid that, they say once you know you are Brahman, that's it. Don't talk about anything else. Finish. Which means what? They don't encourage duality even for philosophical discussion. Even for theoretical discussion, it is not encouraged. That is the idea. So the taparya, the intended meaning here is, once you know that everything is Brahman and you are Brahman, may you allow the mind to be devoted only to this. Let the life go on if the life is there, and if it is going on, let it go on. Don't bother. Let the intellect be only on this. Across all situations, across all experiences, in all states, everywhere. That is that. In 3 periods of time. So when you do that, this vasana, satbhava vasana becomes very strong. And these 3 aspects of doership, enjoyership, and the vasanas that arise because of the force of the past habit, the habitual error will be completely eliminated. Then what will be there? The mind will be in sahaja nirvikalpa samadhi. The mind will be constantly in a state of absorption in the truth of the self, where no sense of duality appears in the mind. This is it is for the sake of encouraging a person to be very alert with respect to habitual error. It should be taken like that. It is not about putting all different enlightened people on different scales. No, it's not that. It's not scale of enlightenment. It is the it is the commitment of the mind on enlightenment. Right? The next one. With the end of selfish actions, brooding over the sense object. With the end of actions done with doership. Okay, that is how we shall understand, not selfish action. If you do selfless action to save the world and thinking that I am saving the world, that is also egoistic action. Kriyanashe bhave chintana nasho asmat vasana nashyaha. With the sense of doership destroyed, the whole gamut of thought processes associated with that are destroyed, and brooding over things is destroyed. With brooding over things is destroyed, the habitual programmed attachment and attraction towards objects, instinctive sense of attraction towards objects is destroyed, and vasana prakshayo moksha. When vasanas are completely destroyed, there is moksha. Sa jivan mukti tarishyate. With the end of with the end of doership, brooding over sense objects ends, which is followed by the destruction of vasanas. The final destruction of vasanas is liberation. This is regarded as liberation in life. Again, it is not to be practiced as the process of destroying vasanas. What are you doing? I understood I am Brahman, now I want to destroy the vasanas. That means there are 2 things. I am there, vasanas are there to be destroyed. Wherever there is a second, so long fear does not leave a person. As long as there is a second, you are not enlightened. So, this instruction, it should be converted as I alone am. Whatever you are thinking, come back to this truth of yourself. That's all. No more thinking. That is how it should be understood. It is this explanation should be converted into the teaching method. This explanation means, see, apparently the vachyartha, the verbal meaning is, first there is when the doership is not there, brooding over is not there. When brooding over is not there, vasanas are not there. So when the vasanas are completely destroyed, there is liberation. That means when you know that you are Brahman, there is no liberation. Then what about jnana devta kaivalyam? Knowledge alone is liberation. Kaivalyam means aloneness. I alone have nothing other than me. What is that? Then that is not liberation. That is liberation. Knowledge is liberation. So this is to be understood as, if you find yourself thinking about a second entity, come back to knowledge. That's all. This is the only meaning for all this. Practically, this is the meaning. It is not that, you encourage the idea that there are objects, there are vasanas, I should control the vasanas, and I have become the controller of the vasanas. This becomes another duality game. So that is not what is talking about. That is why there is another extreme school which says no vasana kshayam. You don't need to destroy vasanas. You heard, you are Brahman, that's it. You are liberated, understood, finished, shut up. No more talk. This is one school. So then what happens? People go to Rishikesh, they will listen to one lecture. No vasana kshayam, I can do what I want. So that is why the other school says this way of teaching is useless because all the fellows are becoming intelligent. The sannyasa dharma is not maintained. You are not maintaining the way of life that is conducive for establishing inner knowledge. So you have to teach like this. So it is only a conflict with respect to the methodology of teaching. It is not with respect to the reality. Reality is the same. The knowledge of the reality is the same. The methodology of recommending the lifestyle, after the knowledge, the way of life recommended after the self-knowledge has taken place, in the way in which I recommend, it is a rhetorical conflict between the two schools. One school which says vasana should be destroyed, another school says no vasana destruction. You are the self and that's it, that is vasana. There is only Brahman, there is nothing other than you. So this is only a rhetorical war. It is not because once you go to some Dayananda school, Swami Dayananda school, if you say in the satsang vasana kshayam, he will start teasing you very badly in front of everybody. No, this vasana kshayam is not needed. There is no vasana kshayam. That is vasana. Who is there to do vasana kshayam? It's a rhetoric. So you have to understand. They also mean, then they will say it is jnana nishta. They use a different language. You have to be established in the knowledge. So it is a positive assertion. Instead of telling, don't eat junk food, you say eat healthy food. Both are telling the same thing. If you eat only healthy food. This fellow says, don't eat junk food, eat only healthy food. This is all the difference. Okay. So when the longing to be one with Brahman has vividly risen to expression, Sattvasanas Spurthi Vijrumbhane Sati Hyasau Vilinapya Ahamadi Vasana Ati Prakrishta Yaruna Prabhayam Viliyate Sadhu Yatha Tamistra. When the longing to be one with the reality has vividly risen to expression, the egocentric vasanas will readily disappear, as the most intense darkness completely disappears in the radiant glow of the rising sun. So it is only about what he is talking about is the importance of the impression left in the mind by self-knowledge. We always have this problem. When we know something, that knowledge does not translate into living reality. There is a gap between knowing and being. This knowing and being gap, why it is there? Because the commitment to the knowing is not there in all levels of functioning. So all our cultural aspects, we had one discussion with one student. So he has a problem with the cultural and the religious aspect, that is the package that surrounds the self-knowledge in our ashram. Okay. So the one person does not, I was also like this, I also have a problem. I was saying, Brahman, what is this? Everything, you can do anything and you can be devoted to self-knowledge no matter what is the way of life, and you don't need to all. It doesn't work because the Vedic Dharma, the way of life that is based on, recommended by the Veda, with the active way of life, and even if you are sannyasi, the specific regulations and rules for sannyasi, they are there to provide a context where you can be committed to self-knowledge, and that encourage self-knowledge and discourage egocentric thinking. If you don't have this context, that gap between knowing and being will not be bridged. Either you are a person who has lived in this context for a very long time, and your mind is completely available for whatever objective knowledge that you are having in that moment. Such a person, when he comes to listen to Vedanta. As he listens, there is clarity. As the clarity takes place, there is perfect abidance in the knowledge. And at that instant, all the vasanas are gone. That person is completely established in Zen. While listening, just while listening Tattvamasi, when the teacher says, this person is Jivan Mukta. This is called Uttama Adhikari, the one who is the highest qualified. He is like a gold medalist before entering a top institute. Gold medalist. It's like this. So it's a quality of the mind. So there you have Madhyama Adhikari, medium qualified, least qualified, Adhama Adhikari. So based on that, the gap between knowing and being. This fellow had a gap between knowing and being in every aspect of life. When in every aspect of life I am only half committed. How will full commitment come suddenly in self-knowledge once I have heard I am Brahman? It will not come because the mind is a habitual machine. So this machine is not purified and the machine is not completely alive. When the machine is not completely alive, the knowledge will not be completely alive. So once having known that I am Brahman, are you supposed to do all kinds of other things for the sake of making the mind abide in the knowledge? No. Use Brahmajnana alone for everything. This is a discussion in Brahma Sutra, Yukti Prasthana, the logical establishment of all the issues concerning the self-knowledge, Brahma Sutra. In that, the way of life recommended for a sannyasi and all that. Once a person has heard that I am Brahman, the person should renounce everything and be devoted only to that knowledge. That person should renounce every other spiritual method and should be devoted only to the knowledge to the exclusion of everything else. This is the recommendation, traditional recommendation from the Shastra. It is not practical, so we have all the other packaging and slowly we go towards that. But the technical recommendation is, once you have clearly understood you are that, you have absolutely no obligation than to be established only in that. There is no Shastra which prohibits that. You can dump everything and be devoted only to the self in the mind, mentally. Physically also, if you can dump everything, please dump. But if you cannot, at least mentally, do not encourage the sense of duality and doership with respect even to God. That is why they say, Ananyaschinta yantomam yejanattar upasade. The one who worships Ishvara with the understanding that Ishvara is not separate from me. Which means, I alone am. I am that. Self-knowledge. So, to be devoted only to the self-knowledge in all the contexts. That is why even when you do puja, you say, I worship with the understanding that I am that. For the purpose of removing the habitual errors or for the purpose of removing ignorance. If you are not a knower, you are removing ignorance. If you are a knower, you are removing habitual error. That is the approach. But ideally, the recommendation from the scripture, once you have heard you are that and you have understood very clearly, let your mind be devoted only to that, to the exclusion of everything else. Across all situations. This is the recommendation. Because you should know this. So, that there is this freedom to be absorbed in the truth of yourself. This is where the religion works out. The religion in the sense, the regulatory body, the spiritual regulatory body works out. It gives you a that. It says, now be devoted only to that. You can dump everything. You can dump me also. That is what the scripture says. He says, dump Shastra. Don't read after that. Don't study Shastra once you know that you are Brahman. Be devoted only to the knowledge. Stop studying Shastra. Don't waste your time studying Shastra. For the sake of Shastra. Suppose you have to teach somebody in a lifestyle, they go like, their monks are traveling all over India. And there is the period when 3 or 4 months where you are not supposed to move anywhere because it is rainy season, called Chaturmasya. So in that 4 months, they will stay in one place. That is when all the teaching takes place. People will bring the scripture, they will teach the scriptures to the villagers. Wherever village they are in, when the season begins, they will stay there. And the villagers will take care of the surrounding villages, and some famous sadhu has come. So they will, very good teacher has come. They will make arrangements for this vow of 4 months of non-moving. And this person will teach all the scriptures because he has studied everything, it's all in the mind. He will revise the study. So it becomes a context for revising the study and it becomes a context for sharing the knowledge, by contributing to the teaching tradition. All that comes in that time. Other than this, no one is not supposed to do anything else. This is the recommendation. You should know that such a thing is there. Okay. With the next verse, we stop. Tamas tamaha karyamanarthajalam na drishyate satyudite dineshe तथा अद्वयानंद रसानुभूतौ न वास्ति बंधो न च दुःख गंधः. Darkness and its resultant sorrows, tamaha karyam and its effects, darkness, ignorance and its effects, and all its meaningless manifestations are not noticed when the sun has arisen. All the darkness and the different troubles created by the darkness and the different imaginations that are fears that are the result of darkness, they don't arise once the sun arises. My usual example, a kid is sitting in a dark room imagining all the scary cartoon characters coming alive, Jurassic Park in the room. The moment you switch on the light, the whole thing disappears. Where is the Jurassic Park? No. Just like that, once you are the sun of self-knowledge has arisen, all the ignorance and its different magical effects are gone. Then, Tata Advaya Anandarasa Anubhutau, the realization of the essence of the non-dual bliss, which means, which is not the right translation, the Sati Udite Dineshe Advaya Anandarasa Anubhutau. Advaya Anandarasa, the completeness which is one without a second, and its essence, the essence of the completeness which is one without a second, that experience when it comes. Anubhutau means the clear vision of that. What is the rasa? The rasa is nothing but the essence of the truth of that one supreme thing that is one without a second, which is complete in itself, Satchidananda. What is the essence of the truth? The highly awakened and the clear, crystal clear self-knowledge without any doubt. Anubhuta means understanding with respect to oneself as that supreme truth. That's all it means. Okay. Anubhuta. Nava asti. Then when this comes, there is absolutely no bondage. There is no sense of bondage, nor even the smell of sorrow. Dukkha gandha. Not even the smell of sorrow will be there. This is experience. There will be no sense of bondage experienced. In fact, you should not call it as the experience of self-realization. Self-realization, which is the absence of experience. That's all you can say. Absence of your everyday experience of bondage and sorrow. Not even the smell of sorrow will be there in the mind. What is required for what is the price you have to pay for it? Causing the perceived universe, both external and internal, to vanish, and meditating upon the reality which is completeness, one should pass one's time watchfully for any residual prarabdha. Okay, all this we will discuss in the next class. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat. Questions?